Welcome to the All About Digital Marketing podcast. The show all about
digital marketing.
Digital marketing.
Digital marketing.
Digital marketing.
Brought to you by Social Link, a digital marketing agency specializing in social media and content marketing for brave brands and forward-thinking SMEs. I'm your host, Chris Bruno, and as always, we're here to bring you the most actionable tips, tricks, tools, and insights to help you achieve more when it comes to your digital marketing. Subscribe to the show and be sure to share with a friend if you found something useful or interesting. You can find all the show notes and more information on www.allaboutdigitalmarketing.co.uk. Lachlan, hi. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Absolute pleasure.
So, Lachlan, you and I have connected on LinkedIn. We've had a bit of a chat back and forth, and we've been talking about lots of things to do with branding. But for anybody who doesn't know you, and for anybody out there that wants to understand a little bit more about yourself and how you got to where you are today, give us a little bit of the intro.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can probably tell by now that I am from Australia. I'm in Brisbane. And my background is in digital marketing, where I've worked across a bunch of different tech startups and digital agencies. And I guess the role that I've always sat in was around paid performance, where I'd leverage a lot of data to help drive conversion objectives through whatever campaigns we were running, whether it be for SaaS companies, e-commerce stores, or any other industries there. One thing though I did throughout my career from early stages was I took it, I guess, to my time to start documenting exactly what I was learning and sharing my experiences with other digital marketers. And I didn't do this intentionally for any particular reason. I just wanted to do it purely for my own record, just keep track of my career. But after a while, it started accumulating in a bit of an audience for myself, which has really taken off, and it's allowed me to now be a freelancer essentially and work off the audience of the network that I built myself throughout my career, and offer my services as a digital marketer, and even help me understand how to start building products to service the needs of my audience. So yeah, it's really exciting.
I think it's always awesome for me anyway, when I talk to people like yourself, or we've spoken to other people in the past, and they've ended up building a community, but not by focusing on trying to build a community, if that makes sense.
It's always around that, I think when you have intentions to be authentic and just genuinely share value, it just naturally happens because people gravitate towards the people that, are willing to give out more than they want to receive anything. Absolutely.
And it's a really interesting paradigm shift, I think, for a lot of people, where they're kind of, I want to be an influencer, or I want to be X or Y. And, the overnight success stories that lots of people talk about, not realizing that actually there's probably a good few years that's gone into, like you were doing, just sharing that information, giving value to people. And that's how you kind of build up this audience. These things don't usually happen overnight. We'll give a couple of exceptions, I'm sure, to some people. But from your point of view then, that the personal brand side of things that's ended up happening almost coincidentally and alongside what you were actually doing, how important has that been for you in terms of your career now? Because you mentioned then you've gone freelance. So I'm guessing now with a network and this community around you that you're able to interact and engage with lots of people on different levels for different reasons, I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. And going in that kind of organic approach or the timeline throughout my career, it's worked really well because I've been doing this for about 3 or 4 years now. And throughout that time, as I mentioned, I was a digital marketer, learning new skills, sharing my experiences. And it kind of got to a point in my career where just personally I was ready to do the next thing. And I don't think it was a 9-to-5 job was the answer of what I wanted to do. It was something in my own time. And being a millennial, time is something that I value, like being able to have that flexibility around my work. And at that point, I guess I'd published so much content, sharing a lot of case studies about what I've worked on, my thoughts on industry topics. I'd really given my network a good understanding of who I was, what I stood for, and what real tangible skills I actually had. So when it came to wanting to source work, to be honest, a lot of it was inbound to start with. But if, I see opportunities, I'm able to share links to, as I mentioned, case studies that I've worked on or anything, just so I've almost got this repository of content that I can rely on if I am pitching my services or anything else like that. So it's been really effective along my journey.
So for everybody listening, and I think this is what I really want to kind of dig into, when we talk to small businesses, startups, especially at the early stages, we feel that lots of people are trying to create this brand identity. And a lot of people are missing out the fact that when you are just starting out and you have a very small team, usually for me, the brand identity comes from the founder's identity, whether you want to or not. And I'm sure there's going to be discrepancies in this, but the person who's running the show and the person who's trying to get this off the ground becomes kind of the champion for the business. And I think that the personal branding side of it is so important because, again, you kind of permeate into every aspect of the business afterwards. And I wanted to get your input on that. How do you find that businesses react when it comes to kind of having that champion for the business, especially in the early stages, and having that kind of presence and that personal brand to help boost what you're doing as a company?
Yeah, it's a really good statement, actually. A really good example of this is, you're probably aware of it, Buffer. So I remember when they started, it was just the two co-founders, and Joel's someone I follow on Twitter quite religiously, and they started by just being as open and transparent as possible, and it just aligned with the content that their audience actually wanted to engage with, and they grew quite a good audience throughout that time. What I found is that, with a lot of startups, they don't have massive budgets to spend on paid acquisition strategies, or they don't have a team to write content. So the most cost-effective and time-efficient thing that you can really do is just share your own story and try and share the problems that you're really trying to get to the bottom of, and see if that resonates with your audience. And something really powerful about that is that you can get really quick and honest feedback from your audience. So if your audience doesn't like a particular product or something that you're building, you can learn that really quickly and have those open and honest conversations with your audience, and then iterate based on that from there. And that's something I'm doing at the moment, and trying to definitely understand where my audience finds value and build like a product around that, so you can kind of productize your service that you're offering. But I think it's really important. And the last thing I want to touch on that is also around if you are a small startup, if you have a small team, or even if you have a couple of co-founders, really just encouraging a culture or embedding it within the organization that you are the main content distribution channel. So if you've got a team of 5 people instead of just a single solo founder, you can really amplify, I guess, the amount of content you're putting out, and use everyone as champions of the brand.
It's really interesting that you say that. Actually, we've come across big companies that do have the budgets for paid acquisition, etc., but the company culture, including salespeople, marketing people, etc., we find that actually there's a lot of reticence to share company content. And actually the people themselves are sharing the content that they find interesting, but not necessarily industry related. And what people don't realize, or what we try to help people realize, is the fact that, if you're not willing within your organization, or you don't feel that it's appropriate for you to be sharing company updates, whether it be on LinkedIn, blogs, whatever it might be, or videos, if you're not actually getting involved in that, then why should anybody else? And this is something that you've just mentioned there when you said sort of the culture, building that into the culture, this transparency, be yourself, but also actually, you are the biggest content distribution asset compared to having a Facebook page or a Twitter account or whatever it might be for the brand. The people really make it up, because again, we always talk about people buy from people, B2B, actually, there's still Joe and Bob that make a deal, not actually 2 brands or 2 businesses or 2 entities that do a deal.
Definitely. And another thing on that is a lot of brands don't realize that, especially if you are B2B and you're using LinkedIn as your main distribution channel, like a lot of personal profiles get much more, I guess, important weight in the algorithm compared to branded profiles. So if you're, just publishing content on your branded page, you might not get as much exposure as opposed to if you were to publish it across 5 people's pages that work for you. So that's something I think a lot of brands miss.
Absolutely. I agree. So let's talk a little bit then about how small businesses, and especially small business owners, can start doing more in terms of their personal brand. So what sort of advice or techniques, tips, tricks, tools, whatever you want to call it, that you would actually say to people, if you're not doing this, these are the initial starting points, and this is how to get started with your personal branding?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess my answer is a bit biased from my own personal experience, just as a solo kind of digital marketer and founder. But when I started, I think it was really important to, first of all, identify what channels my audience would be on. And this might sound really basic to a lot of digital marketers, and it's because it is kind of branding 101. You're building a brand. It just happens to be that the brand is yourself. So you really need to treat it like a brand and take time to identify who your target audience and persona is going to be, and what channels are they going to be hanging out on. And again, if your channel is LinkedIn, my next suggestion would be to then start small. You don't have to go in overnight and start creating a ton of video content, an original podcast series. You can just start small by just engaging with your audience. Leave a like on someone's post, leave a comment on someone's post the next day. Really take the time to engage with them and understand what it is they're sharing, and then see if you can add additional value onto that they might find useful. And then you'll just start to see over time that momentum builds. And I mean, when I started my personal blog throughout my career, I aimed to post one post a month, which at the time seemed really overwhelming. But, I could write a certain amount of words per week, and that just became addictive over time. And as I said, I learned what my audience really engaged with. So it just kind of grew over time, and it turned into a blog and then a podcast, and now collaborations with other people like yourself. And it just grows over time. And the reason it does that is because, as I said, you will eventually find out what your audience wants. So the best advice I would give is to just start small and then really iterate based on that.
I think that's great advice, and it's something that we always say to people. I can remember years ago being in a meeting with a company that was doing nothing online, and their plan was website, blog, YouTube videos, every social media network that they could do. And you're like, let's scale this back a little bit, guys. Let's do this in a staged kind of attack process. So let's start with something easy. So how many blog articles do you honestly feel that you can start creating, etc.? And people don't realize that, but exactly what you said there, you start small. And something for us that we really believe in is community building. We think it's at the heart of everything that you should do. And you've already mentioned some of the amazing reasons why. For example, getting honest feedback from the people that you're building your product or service for is the best way to make sure that you're building a product that is great for them. Too many people focus on the product and don't actually remember that you've got all these people around you that will tell you what the most important thing is, or what the most important tool or whatever it might be that they're actually looking for. So that's the first bit that for me, community is so important. But the second thing is exactly what you mentioned there. By engaging with these people, all of these things start to build up. So you go from that slow at the beginning, I don't have a community, you start engaging with other people, and then suddenly people are talking to you, and then people are commenting on your posts, and then people are actually having a chat with you about an opportunity, like you said, a bit like how we met on LinkedIn, and then now we're doing the podcast together. All of these things come from spending a bit of time and putting a little bit of content and effort out there, and from doing a little bit of engagement. And I think that community for me is such an important thing. So I wanted to ask from your side, to help founders, small businesses, startups, however they're kind of defined or categorized, how can they really focus on community building? And do you think that community building is where it's at in terms of building this personal brand?
Yeah, 100%. I honestly couldn't agree more with everything you just mentioned then. And I guess, again, from my personal experience, at the moment, I'm building a product, really trying to kind of find product market fit. And to be honest, community is absolutely my biggest priority. And the way I'm focusing on building that is by leveraging other communities. So if there's an existing platform, like if there's Facebook groups, subreddits, really trying to find where my audience is hanging out at the moment. And again, really trying to see if there's any common trends about problems that they have that I can relate to. And really trying to, I guess, engage with that community, and then build my own off the back of that as well. So I think that the thought of having to start a community from scratch can be really daunting. And again, I'm probably going to sound really repetitive now, but just really going back to the basics and starting small. You don't have to build this overnight. If you were to build it overnight, you could run the risk of building the completely wrong thing, which guilty as hell for doing that myself. So yeah, really just take it back to basics, try and leverage other communities if you can. And then also try and use your community as user-generated content. So if you can encourage conversations that really relate with your audience within a community, encouraging them to distribute that content within their own networks, because if they are facing a particular problem, the chances are someone else in their network might also be facing a particular problem, and then they might become a member of the community, and that'll just compound over time.
It's awesome to hear you say this. It sounds like we have a lot of synergy in this regard.
I'm glad.
So, well, it sounds so simple when we talk about it, or it sounds so obvious when we talk about it. But I still think that a lot of people need convincing. And we did a talk for WeWork Labs recently in London. I say recently, just before Christmas. But we were talking with some startups, and our idea is this focus on this community building. And we were getting a lot of pushback from new founders, from people that were starting out. And we had a bit of everything. There was people that were selling actual products. There was people that were selling services, software, other people that had sort of fitness and apps and stuff like that. But one of the things that we were trying to explain is the reason why we want community, and we call it the 3 C's internally, but community drives conversations, conversations drives conversions, and conversions drive community. So it's just kind of this ongoing circle for us as we see it, which is, and again, when you're starting, people say we don't have a community or anything else, but exactly what you said, leveraging other people's communities, finding where people are and engaging in those conversations still brings you back to conversations. And then conversations can lead to conversions to your community. And then you start building it up. And exactly what you mentioned there, one person that you're helping, there's so many businesses that will never say to that person, hey, like, you love what we do and we're working together and we've been working together for 6 months, 9 months, a year, whatever it might be. Do you know anybody else who would like this product, or that could use this product, or that this product would help, for example? And there's loads of people that just don't do that. There's people that aren't taking advantage of probably what is one of the highest converting channels or mediums, which would be referrals. John telling Bob, a really good friend of his, that he's using this and it's absolutely fantastic and you should have a look at it, is more likely to bring you something in than spending a tenner on paid ads as boosted posts or whatever it might be on Facebook.
Definitely. 100%. I think that something that a lot of founders forget is that and I mean, it's easier said than done, but there's a million different ways that you could actually monetize an audience. But if you build a beautiful product and it doesn't have an audience, it's not worth very much. So I think that before you even build a product, you should focus on building a community. And then, as I said before, really try and extract some insights out of that.
Thank you for saying that. We met with one of the startups that was in the WeWork Labs presentation that we were giving. And literally they were saying to us, yeah, but the product's not finished yet. So we haven't started our marketing and one thing and another. When do you think we should start? And I was like, that you should have already started. I was like,
years ago.
Yeah, I was like that. Why aren't you talking to people? Why aren't you finding people that potentially would have interest in your product? Why aren't you engaging with them to understand what their true needs are, rather than building what you think is perfect for a group of people that would happily probably tell you? This is the important thing, if you literally took the time to ask them, a lot of people online will just turn around and go, yeah, I really am struggling with X, or I really need a solution to Y, or actually my biggest issue isn't Y at all, it's Z. And if you start to collect this feedback in the sense of, hang on a second, that's 20 people now that have told me I should be doing A, not B, then you can actually start building a product that for 20 people, you can bring them in, you can ask them things, you can ask them to complete a feedback survey if you want to, but you could literally get in touch with these people and have one-to-one conversations, especially in these early stages, and start documenting that process a bit like what you were talking about, and show the whole process of how you're building your business, your app, your community, your SaaS product, whatever it might be, and use that to drive the community building aspect, especially in those early stages.
Absolutely. People love being included in that process as well. It makes it seem like they're kind of building the product with you.
I can't remember. I think it was Dropbox, but I'm probably going to get his name wrong. It's been a while since I've really looked into this, but I think it was Drew who was starting Dropbox. And actually, before he had even written a line of code for Dropbox, he explained what it was that he thought would be a good, useful product, i.e. this idea of file storage, file sharing, really easy to use, one thing another, and then put it up as a landing page. No product, no buy-in, no nothing, but literally saying, if this sounds like a product that you'd like or that it would be useful to you or anything else, then just sign up for the newsletter and we'll keep you informed of what we're doing and how we're doing it. And if I can't remember what the numbers were, but literally it was thousands of people signed up, shared one thing another. And this thing kind of went from nothing, an idea, to holy shit, actually, this is something that we need to start working on now. We need to start writing the code because there's a huge audience that are telling us that this is exactly what they want.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can think of so many other platforms that have done similar things. And I mean, yeah, the proof's there, I guess.
Do you find that a lot of founders are too focused on the product that they forget to listen to the community?
100%. And as I said before, I'm guilty of doing this myself. I think it was probably mid last year, a lot of really powerful no-code tools kind of caught the spotlight. And then I almost got a bit of shiny object syndrome and started just building pointless things for the fun of it. But then was thankful enough to pull myself out of it and say, take things back to basics. I think that the barrier to entry is so, I wouldn't say low, but it's much more minimal than what it used to be for building products now, that it is easy to get distracted in trying to solve what you think are your own unique problems, which is great because you've got great insights for that. But again, you just really need to be able to take things back and validate things. And as you mentioned before, the example of don't even build a product, build the concept of a product and try and sell that vision to other people and get buy-in from them before you even go into it. I think that's an amazing idea that most founders, and if you were to hear a lot of stories from successful startups like Product Hunt, Segment, Buffer, like these all followed that exact trend and story that you just mentioned. So yeah, it's really powerful.
It's, yeah, again, I'm glad to hear you say it. And again, for everybody else who's listening, really bear that in mind. It's time to look around yourself, a little bit of introspection and see whether or not you're building something for somebody else or if you're building it based on your own views and what you're thinking. Lachlan, in terms of video, for me, I think video is a huge opportunity for both personal and company brands. But I wanted to find out a little bit from your point of view or from anything that you've done and tests or anything like that. What are the kind of, what sort of things would you say to founders, to small businesses to be able to use video to help maximize what they're trying to do in terms of their personal branding?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's two things that come to mind that I'd like to cover with that. The first is keep it as authentic as possible. So video certainly doesn't need to be as polished. And again, the barrier to entry for creating video is so simple these days, you know, with the iPhone 11 Pro camera, like it's so easy to shoot quality content and quickly publish that natively through a mobile app. The other thing is, especially if you are a startup founder, your time might be limited. So you really need to get the most out of the content you create. So I always give founders the advice of repurposing their content. So if you shoot, let's say, a video interview with someone that's a couple minutes long, you could transcribe that, turn it into a blog post, and then you've got great content on your website that can be indexed in Search Console. You could repurpose the audio from that into a podcast, upload that to something like Anchor and distribute that across every podcasting platform. You could grab some quotes, turn it into some social posts. And if you're doing an interview with a guest, you could create some social posts for them and share that with their network. So I think repurposing video is really powerful. And at the same time, don't overdo or try and overkill video because you think that it needs to be this glorious thing. I think that a lot of people prefer short, actionable, and by actionable I mean something that delivers actionable insights video from honest people.
It's again, I agree completely. It's like we're both singing off the same hymn sheet and that we've agreed all of this in advance. But I was saying to somebody, if you record a really good video, no matter what it is, a Facebook Live, you chatting with a supplier or with somebody else, if you're doing that video, how many social posts would that represent for you at the moment? And the guy turned around and went, probably a couple. We could put it on Twitter, we could put it on LinkedIn, we could share it and just tell people about the video. I was like, okay, cool. What if? And then I went into the exact same list of what you've just done. And suddenly these people are going, hang on a second, I didn't know you could do that. Or why would I do it? Well, actually, that's interesting. Or the blog aspect of it, or quote graphics, or shorter videos that you can clip and then put that out to get people interested to bring them back to the main video. All of these little things. And they do take a bit of time, I'm not going to lie, but they take a hell of a lot less time than trying to secure your next guest or your next person to talk to or organizing another full scale interview. It's things that literally can be done after hours, whenever you find the time to do it. There's a load of tools out there that are really useful for people. Things like Headliner, make a really easy version of the video or a shorter version of the video, or make a version of an audio file into a video, whatever you want to do. But these things are such a great way to keep your audience engaged. And I think it was from Tim Ferriss's podcast, but one of the things that he had tested after having done, I don't know how many, was this idea that what can I do better? And people were commenting, and it's going through the comments and everything else. And you realize that actually one of the things that people said was, I need a short clip to send this to John, to Bob, to whoever it is in my friend group that will catch their interest and then make them want to listen to the rest of the interview. Because if you share something with somebody and it's an hour long, for example, then they're less, or they can be more hesitant to invest that 1 hour of time. Whereas if you can capture their interest with a 30-second or a 60-second clip, that is enough to get people to go, that's interesting. I want to find out more. I'm going to listen to the episode or watch the video or whatever it might be. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. I think a really good example of that is someone like Gary Vee in the industry. So yes, he does create a whole bunch of content. I mean, he's got a team dedicated to that. But if you were to go across every one of his social platforms, a lot of it's just repurposed from other platforms. So it's not like he's going out and creating native content specifically for a dedicated platform. They tend to just grab relevant snippets from different videos and kind of segment that across different platforms. And that's why he's able to adopt these new platforms and build quite a good audience on them as soon as they come out, because he's just quite smart about repurposing that content.
Interesting. I try not to bring up Gary Vee because I find that he really polarizes people.
Yeah, I agree as well. But first thing that came to mind.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's interesting because if you are in marketing or if you are a marketer, you look at him and you go, this is brilliant. Like the way he does it on platforms constantly. And like you said, a lot of it is repurposed. So it'll be him giving a talk somewhere and that turns into 4 or 5 clips that then get used on various different platforms and everything else. But I don't necessarily agree with everything he says in terms of, you should be working 100 hours and not sleeping and buying stuff from a garage sale and selling it on, etc. But I think that what we talked about earlier on in terms of, the engagement side of it, finding and leveraging other communities, just putting yourself out there, the first step to all of this. And I did an interview recently, a conversation on the podcast recently with Cheryl Tan. And she was an ex-TV news journalist who's now doing video coaching and media training to help founders, entrepreneurs, CEOs and stuff like that to come across better on video, whether it be for themselves or for interviews with news. But literally we were talking about it and she was like that. But the most important thing, and congratulations, is you started. And this is the bit that people don't realize, you've just got to get started. Don't compare yourself to a Gary Vee. That's not the interesting point. That's not where you're at. Look at the big YouTube stars, go all the way back to their first ever videos. And that's where you're at right now. And that's where they were as well. So all of these things take time to kind of build up, but your skills go up. Your level of engagement with community, with people starts to build. You find the right people and they find you. That builds your starting blocks. But all of these things just begin with getting started. And I think that's the bit that people really struggle with. Have you found that as well?
100%. Even myself, to be honest. Like when I started, I kind of went in with the mentality that whatever I was going to publish, I knew it was going to be crap, to be honest. But the beauty is that no one was listening. So throughout that period where I had no audience, I kind of took that as a positive and kind of took it to myself to iterate again on what type of, what could I do better next time, as you mentioned earlier before. And by the time that I did start to know how to polish my content, that is when the audience started coming in. So I think I remember in the first year of posting a blog once a month, I think I probably had maybe 6 visitors to my blog, which was shocking. I mean, when I look back at it now, but at the time, I was stoked on that because I kind of went in with the mentality that no one was going to see it at all. And it was just an experimental platform for me. So I think just, accepting that it's going to be bad and embracing that and just knowing that you will get better. It's like anything in life, I guess. If you just keep trying at it, you will only get better at it.
I've got 2 bits or 2 stories to sort of say around that. We decided to do this as an agency. We wanted to create a podcast. We wanted to create it for small to mid-sized businesses, business owners, people that are trying their best, but we wanted to find a way to give more value back and have these great conversations with people to kind of help encourage people to do more when it came to their marketing and to realize that, small steps can have huge impacts, etc. But when we actually recorded the very first episode, this podcast didn't have a name. And it's
MVP.
Yeah.
Podcast.
Absolutely. So our first call ever for regarding the podcast was actually the first podcast. So we brought the whole team together and we all just sort of chatted about it and what we were trying to do and why we were trying to do it and what we wanted to kind of achieve from it. But it didn't have a name. So I think the first episode we even ended up naming something along the lines of a podcast has no name. And it was literally based on that. And it was kind of funny. But the point that we tried to say to people afterwards was, it's not about perfecting this brand, this image. You know, I've got to get the right name. I've got to get the right URL. None of those things really matter at the beginning. Like if you think about it, you know, Uber has nothing to do with transport until Uber became Uber. It's not, you know, it was never something that you were thinking, yep, I'm going to quickly have a Google for an Uber, and because that equates to the perfect name for taxis or car services or anything else like that. But people don't realize. So getting that first step and getting started is one of the first bits that I really think is important. But the other side of it that you were saying, you know, it's an experimental platform. And this is something that a lot of people don't realize or they don't notice. But Tim Ferriss recently has been trying all sorts of new things. So he's trying to shake up the way he does his newsletters. He's trying to shake up the way he's doing the blog articles. He's focused a lot on the 5 Bullet Friday. But he literally is sending people emails at the moment going, I'm still experimenting. And this is a guy with millions of followers and millions of people listening every week, every new episode that he puts out, every piece of content he puts out. But he's still experimenting and he's still testing things. And this is something where I feel that people want to try and perfect the idea in their head without actually validating it, i.e., just do it and see how people respond. And don't do it once and then tell me that video doesn't work. Do it 100 times and then tell me video doesn't work because you haven't found any way of changing it or experimenting in a different way or finding a new audience. That's how you kind of build that up. And I think that experimentation is so, so important. Like, what sort of things have you tried over the years when you're doing your blogs and your own personal branding? What are some of the things that you've tried that have worked, that haven't worked, or anything like that?
It's a really good question. So I went through a stage of, well, I've had 2 different podcasts now. So my original one was just me talking into my phone once a week, talking about the latest industry news. And the reason that I did that is because as a digital marketer, I think the year was 2017, podcasts were really starting to take off over here in Australia. And I was looking at changing jobs at the time. And a lot of people in interviews, a lot of brands I was interviewing at, they were talking about how they wanted to grow a marketing team to build some content. And then they all mentioned that they wanted to build a podcast or create a podcast. And so I kind of took it to myself to be ahead of my competition in the marketplace for applying for these roles. So I literally just grabbed my phone and started recording my own podcasts. And just taking back to what you mentioned before about being an experimental platform, the beauty of anything related to personal branding for digital marketing is that you're actually learning how to market yourself. So if you're creating content, that's content marketing. If you're optimizing it on your blog, that's SEO. If you're doing community management, like these are all really relevant skills. Even if you're a CTO at a startup, early stage startup, like these are all important skills that you should know as a founder or a co-founder. Some other experimental things I've tried, like storytelling, really trying to get personal on a lot of, there was a phase there where I did that. And trying to think what else, native video, LinkedIn articles on my blog, collaboration on like guest publishing for other blogs. And even now just kind of featuring on a lot of other podcasts internationally to see where I can add value across or outside of my small network itself. But has there been anything that you've tried yourself that's changed over time as well?
Oh, we went crazy last year as an agency, and we started setting ourselves monthly experiments, which became sort of internal challenges. But my favorite was the 30 days of live challenge. So somebody on the team every day for a whole month would go live on one platform or another. By the end of the month, I think we ended up with like 32 different videos. They ranged from, I was in Italy at one point, in France, then in England. Oh, wow. One of the guys did a live from a canoe, and it just became so much fun. And it was always around our current audience. It was always around the same themes of digital marketing, etc. But it just became fun, and we kind of enjoyed it more and more. I was out on a Saturday with a friend at Goodwood Racetrack, and he was doing a BMW skid pad kind of thing. So literally I went live, and in the background you can just see him slipping and sliding this BMW all over the place. But it just became something that was really interesting. And funnily enough, one of the challenges was, right, can we set up, record, start a podcast in 30 days? And here we are. We're now, I think this is our 31st or so 32nd episode that we're recording today with yourself. And all of this has happened since we launched at the end of July, beginning of August. The podcast has had over 2,000 listens. We keep getting sort of more feedback and people actually reaching out to us now to try and get on the show as well. And it's just been incredible. And this started as, could we create something and would it have value, or would it add value to other people? And could we do it in 30 days? So none of this, well, talk about it for 6 months, plan it for another 6 months, and then look at the execution for 6 months. It was literally a case of, no, we're going to do this. We know what we want to do. We know what we can talk about and what our strong points are. Let's just do it. Hence starting and recording the very first episode when we didn't even have a name. But all of this was these challenges. One of the ones that we did was 100 blogs in a month. The team hated that idea. So with only 4 of us on full time, and then obviously we've got other people and freelancers, etc., that we work with. But in our heads, it didn't sound so bad. And then as you started divvying it up, it was absolutely huge. We had nearly an article each per day to keep knocking out and to make sure that it was valuable as well and content that was good. But again, it was an experiment, and we've got articles about it online. But literally, I think our organic search rates, our general traffic and everything else just skyrocketed as a result. And the 30 days of live videos ended up with tens of thousands of views across all the various different platforms as we kept sharing and using the videos. And we looked at this afterwards and you're like, oh my God. Like the reality of it is, when you're doing these experiments, obviously not all of these things are sustainable. And massive disclaimer, I don't recommend anyone tries to write 100 blogs in a month. Start with 1 a month like Lachlan did. And I think that's a really good starting point. But the idea was we just wanted to keep playing. We wanted to keep trying. We wanted to see how people reacted to different things. We've built other websites for variations of our products and we've tested those with people. We've done all sorts of things because for me, I don't know it all. And in fact, when I talk to clients, I tell them I don't know it all. I can't guarantee you results. And anyone who does guarantee you results or tells you that within the next 30 days, they're going to make you £1 million in sales, well, good luck to you. I hope it works out. I hope that they're telling the truth. I genuinely don't think that they are, but everything from our side has been a slow and steady process of constantly and continuously building slowly but surely a real engaged community. And that's how we've ended up building our business and our clients' businesses. And that's something that I really believe in. And actually, it probably brings me on to a really good question for you. I absolutely hate all the people that are out there selling, this is the funnel for you. And with this funnel, you're going to make 6 figures.
100%. Yeah, I'm like you. I try and almost not pitch myself in a way. I pitch that I'm not the solution, but as you said, like I'm always learning. I think that there's no such thing as someone who works in the digital industry that's not learning. I remember when I started as a paid performance marketer working across things like Facebook ads, like you could literally just build a drop shipping store and create a business overnight and run it sustainably with Facebook ads. But then that model completely got saturated and that's not relevant anymore. And even paid acquisition channels in general are just becoming so expensive over here. So again, like that's not something I knew that was going to be sustainable. So now we're looking at like other growth channels and really just kind of putting yourself out there. And I think you mentioned before is just kind of iterating and trying to almost fail quickly in a way. So I think that as digital marketers, it's so important to just be experimental, whether it be with new platforms like TikTok or Pinterest. I mean, Pinterest's been out for a while, but just really seeing if you can build something off that. And if the worst case scenario, it fails, write a blog post about it and then share your thoughts on it so other people can learn from it as well.
Couldn't agree more. Lachlan, this has been an awesome conversation. I think we both feel very similarly about certain things. So there hasn't been as much division in terms of what we've been talking about. But in terms of yourself personally, what's your favorite platform?
I'm really loving TikTok at the moment, as I mentioned. I think it's very underutilized, particularly in Australia, both for brands and I guess influencers slash creators.
Awesome. Okay. And we're going to get your TikTok username so that people can follow you on there as well and find out what you're doing. Lachlan, thank you very much. Where can people find you online then other than on TikTok?
Absolutely. So my personal blog, which I mentioned, is just lachlanKirkwood.com. I publish a lot on LinkedIn, just Lachlan Kirkwood, and on Twitter, I'm at Lachlan Kirkwood. Unfortunately, on TikTok, I couldn't get my handle. Someone bet me to it. So I'm at Lachlan Kirkwood, number 1. So yeah, be sure to check it out. Again, I was too late, so I made that mistake and I regret it.
It's all good. What we'll do is we'll add all of those links into the show notes. Lachlan, thank you so much for coming on today. And I'm hoping that we're going to continue our conversations afterwards and hopefully create some more content together, because I think this message just needs to be repeated. Experiment, just get started, try things and see what happens. And I think it's going to be a huge impact for anybody who's listening.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, man.
The All About Digital Marketing podcast is brought to you by Social Inc., a distributed digital marketing agency specialized in delivering results through online campaigns. Whether it's content marketing, social media marketing, online advertising, or web design, we've got you covered, from strategy through to delivery. If you're struggling with your digital marketing, get in touch today by simply visiting www.socialinc.co.